Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, and more, including smaller deals that you can do without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest podcast. Let's get started. Pete Neubig is the former co-founder of Empire Industries Realty and Property Management based in Houston, Texas. He sold his company to Mind Management, where he was the vice president of Eastern Operations. Pete is currently the co-founder and CEO of VPM Solutions. VPM Solutions is an online platform that connects the real estate industry with virtual team members across the globe. Pete is also a past board member of the National Association of Residential Property Managers and is the current host of the NARPM radio podcast. When Pete is not working, he runs marathons with his wife, Felicia. Pete, welcome to the DealQuest podcast.
Corey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I will tell you, I've run one marathon in my life. I actually said I was going to do a lot more than I never did. But so I respect the plural on the marathons in your bio.
Yeah, well, I will say it's been a few years since I ran. I think 2 years since I ran my last marathon, and my back has given up. It's a case of old age. So I think I'm a walker and maybe a half marathoner now. But my wife's she's still out there doing the full.
I got it. Well, I think I got a few years on you, so trust me, I know the feeling. So, Pete, before we get into specifics on your personal deal experience and what your current company is doing now, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm guessing maybe it wasn't even in the real estate industry and probably not doing deals, but you tell me.
So I was just at a conference and at a property management conference, and no one ever says, man, when I grow up, I want to be a property manager. Like, that's the joke, right? It's like, I want to grow up and be a property manager, says no one ever. So when I was growing up, 10, 12 years old, my father was a firefighter. So I wanted to be a firefighter. And my uncle, though, he owned his business. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur and a firefighter. And I think I also wanted to be an astronaut. So
I love it.
When I was that age, though, 12, my first job was I used to sling the New York Daily News. And that, to this day, Corey, is the hardest job I ever had. It's 7 days, rain, sleet, snow.
Yeah.
And you had to deliver the papers before school. So it was like, 5 a.m. and I'm out there freezing, my whatever is off.
Yeah.
And I have to be there every day. And then at night, you have to go in and you have to, get the funds, get the money. So you actually, most people don't notice, when you were a newsboy back then, you actually bought the papers and then you sold the papers, and then whatever you got over, that was your take home.
Yeah.
And so I found ways to get people to pay me, because this is obviously way before computers. They would leave envelopes on their door. Like, I would just try any way I can operationally to make things more efficient, and not knowing that at the time as a 12-year-old. And that has become my superpower. I'm an efficiency guy. I love looking for inefficiencies and building efficiencies.
I love it. Listen, I remember those days. I actually never had a paper route. I delivered flyers door to door in Brooklyn. That was my job as a teen.
How many times you get a gun thrown at you in front?
No, it wasn't that bad. We were in the horrible neighborhoods, but I do remember a story. It's funny. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I had an uncle who lived out on Long Island. He was the only entrepreneur in the entire family. My parents, everybody else I knew worked for somebody. And I remember that my uncle's family was in an uproar because of the newspaper delivery boy, because this whole thing about how they collect their own money.
Yeah.
Because it turned out that the kid was, well, according to my uncle, smart, although I just, according to the rest of the family, a scammer. And he was a little bit of both, and, certainly don't support the ethics, but my uncle supported sort of respected the hustle. And what this guy did was he figured out what days of the week and times of the day different family members were home. And he collected like 3 times on the same paper route from different family members who
Oh,
didn't know that the
wow.
other family member had paid.
Yeah.
So again, I do not, my uncle was that kind of guy who would like just respected the hustle, and I get it, but I certainly didn't respect the ethics. So in any case, it's funny. I haven't
100%. I'm with you on that.
story in a while. So one more question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? It could have been, early, when you're younger, it could have been an early, real estate deal. You tell me.
Yeah, I'll tell you my first real estate deal. So I bought a duplex in Houston when I was 31. I started getting in the game when 31. I'm 54 now, so I've been in the game for 20 years. Survived it for 20 years, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And my second deal, I was an investor, a passive investor in a 100-unit apartment complex, and it closed the same day.
Wow.
So that's my first kind of deal. Yeah. So the duplex, this is interesting. So, this is 2001. We hadn't quite hit the depths of 2008 yet.
Yes.
And on this particular deal, I guess we'll respect the hustle, but not the ethics on this.
Yeah.
Corey, don't think of any less of me. I had no money. I was a young man. So we inflated the price of the duplex so I can put less down. So I can put more down, but the bank lent me the money and then I gave back the money at closing. It was kind of a weird deal that it allowed me to get it with no money down, basically.
Yeah, a lot of again, we've given a lot of caveats, but there was a lot of that going on back then. Let's just say that.
And no one knew anything, right? It wasn't like it was kind of looked frowned upon, but it wasn't illegal. You know what I mean? And then, but the funny thing is, the 100-unit apartment complex, that deal lasted like less than 3 years, and we ended up losing the property. I was still working full time at the time, so I used my IRA money. So I changed it to a self-directed IRA, and I invested it in this apartment complex. We lose the apartment complex. I'm a working man still. I wasn't like an entrepreneur. I wasn't wealthy by any means. And even though I was a passive investor, Corey, I made the mistake of hiring an attorney to review all of the documents. And you get what you pay for. He wasn't like, this high dollar guy. He wasn't super detailed, evidently. And I had checked the box where I was personally signing for the note. And then I checked another box, evidently, that said, even if we lose the property and they sell the property for more than what we owe, they can still come after us for the full balance, which is never heard of. Yeah, we ended up winning that one in court, but it cost me about 30 grand.
Yeah, because they really have no damages in that case, even though the contract provides it. That how can they prove damage?
Correct. I could do a whole podcast just on that property alone, and that but I'll spare the details and the boredom for everybody. But those are my first deals.
Wow. So obviously, listen, as you got older, I'd love to maybe know how you got there. You got involved with Empire Industries and ended up, building that and selling it. What, anything else interesting along the journey? And then let's get to
well, I'll tell you how we started Empire, right? Yeah. So Empire is a property management firm that managed single family homes. Yeah. My business partner, Steve, and I, we bought 31 single family homes from 2005 to 2007 or something like that, or 6 to 8, something like that.
Okay.
And what happened was we bought so many homes. We both loved the art of the deal, so to speak, right? We bought the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. We bought the Art of the Deal by Trump, and we're like, oh my God, we're buying all these properties. Yeah. What we did not like was managing the properties. We didn't like getting them leased out. Like, we just loved buying the properties. And so, of course, we bought too many. We had to stop buying because we couldn't manage them anymore. And we ended up creating Empire, because I'm from New York, right? This is in Houston, Texas. I created Empire. Empire was never meant to be a third-party management company. Our vision at the time was to buy 500 homes and just run them ourselves and have our own management firm. Yeah. And then one thing turned into another. And next thing you know, we're managing 67 properties. I only own 31. And my business partner's like, oh yeah, we're doing this for Jeff, and we're doing this for so-and-so. We're doing this for so-and-so. And I was in like 10. In 2011, I realized that the property management firm made money and my properties didn't. And I'm like, I have the wrong properties, or real estate, because I was buying on cash flow, not on all the principles of real estate. That's a whole other problem that I did early on. And so we decided to jump all in on property management. And so we started third party managing in 2012. And that's when I quit my job at 41, I think I was. 42, I think I was. 42 when I started my first business. Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting? I don't know, I think last week this topic came up with somebody I was talking about. Based upon the press, and everything, that there's a myth out there that the majority of entrepreneurs are these kids in their, 20s or even teens, right?
Yep.
Start business, and the statistics actually show that folks in their 40s and 50s start more businesses than the stereotypical, unicorn tech 22-year-old founder, right? So, people might think it's unusual, but it's actually more the case that more seasoned folks start businesses.
I just, it's funny. I must have read the same thing you did because I read that. And then the next line was that there's less entrepreneurs now than there were like 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's the least amount of entrepreneurs percentage wise than any other time in this country.
Which is crazy because that's another, perception that, I agree. I see the same thing that, I think most people think entrepreneurship's at an all-time high, right? I think
Right.
talking about entrepreneurship's at an all-time high. And also I think it's definitional, right? Because I think one of the differences there is if you go back 40, 50 years, you had the butcher and the baker like you had a lot of small Main Street local
True.
businesses. Those have been consolidated, right? Big box retail, all that kind of stuff, online, Amazon, etc. But I think if you define entrepreneurs differently than self-employed business owners, those statistics might look different.
It's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
So, in any case, I don't know for sure. All right, so talk to us. So you continue to grow that business, and then eventually sold us. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that journey. And I know that you have kindly said that you will, talk about what you did right and what you, in hindsight, could have done better
Yeah,
in that journey, right?
I'm pretty transparent, open book. And so if anybody ever just, wants to reach out to me afterwards, I'm more than happy to tell them more about my journey. So when we started the business, our vision was like 300 homes, and then we get to 300, then the vision becomes 500 and so on.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, Corey, our vision between my business partner and I was fractured. I personally wanted to build 1,500 units in one market and run the best, most, efficient company, right? Going back to my days as a newsboy, right? Efficient company.
Yeah.
In that company, I knew could make us $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And I was kind of happy with that.
Yeah.
My business partner, he wanted to do 20,000 homes across the whole US and build this whole big thing. And we ended up going into 3 markets. I didn't say anything early on, and that was a mistake, right? So when the vision changes and you're not on board, and you really need to nut up and say, hey, man, this is not what I want. But I was so worried that the business partnership would end, and I was right. It just ended 3 years later.
Yeah.
And so we went into 3 markets, which made us a little bit more attractive to somebody who was actually had our vision.
Yes.
And they had a bunch of money from venture capital, and they were rolling up property management firms. When we got to that point, my business partner, he's like, man, I just want to go ahead and sell. And my honestly, I wanted to be a CEO of a $5 million business making $1 million. I thought that would be cool. I thought that was, and so at that time I had a couple of choices to make. One choice was sell. The other choice was not sell and hold him kind of hostage.
Yeah.
And then the third one was try to find another investor to buy him out.
Right.
And so the challenge was we had run the business very poorly for many years. We kept saying we were going to invest back in the business, but really we were spending money in the business and not investing. So we had a poor balance sheet. So there was no way I was getting the money from the banks. So then I had to go out and maybe go get money. And things are moving so fast that I really didn't have the time to do it. And I really didn't want to get multiple partners or another partner. The devil you have versus the devil you don't. Plus, we were in business we were friends first. We were in business for over 20 years. We became business partners, then we became best friends. So we were business partners first, then became best friends for 20 years. And I'm like, am I really, like, if I told this guy that I'm not going to sell, my relationship is over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'd rather just, what's the worst thing that happens? I put a bunch of money in my pocket, get a job with the company that buys us for more than money that I ever paid myself. It's not the worst thing. And it wasn't, but it was not, it's funny. So we end up selling, and I'm not happy about it. And I was being kind of a little bitch about it, to be quite honest. Yeah. I get the job with the new company, and I see how they treat my people, my clients, And I realized that this is not my baby anymore. I have no power, even though I was going to quote unquote move the needle. That's a VC term where you can, you can make movement, right? And I couldn't. Like it was all kind of hearsay. And I was miserable, man. I was miserable. And again, I had more money in my bank account. I had more money, cash flow coming in, from paying me from what they were paying me. And I was miserable. And I remember it was COVID. COVID was going on. I'm down in my office. Because I moved from the office to my home office, and my wife was working from home. She comes down one day and she goes, "You cannot talk to your people like that." I go, "Talk to my people?" I'm like, "No, I was talking to my boss." And she goes, "That's even worse." She goes, "You are a disgruntled employee and you need to quit." And so I lasted about 18 months. I realized that I was not a good team member. I was not a good employee. Looking back, I could have made some better decisions on that. Like I was not a good team player. And I was mad that I had to sell. I was mad the way they would treat my people. A lot of my people that were working with me at Empire, they were abandoning ship. I knew what we needed to do for Mind to be successful. But when you are a venture-backed company, you have a different master. Like when I owned Empire and it was just my company with Steve, the master was the client. Yes. Like I served the client, and then secondarily, I served my team, or I served my team served the client, right? With venture-backed funds, you serve the investor.
Yeah.
And the investors need a return on their money, or they need to see that you're gaining market share. And what was happening was we were gaining market share, but the churn rate on the back end, it was like a faucet. And I'm like, look, if we just slow down the growth and we invest money and time into our process and our product, I promise you in 5 years, we're going to own the world. And it just never materialized. And so they are in the same spot they were 4 or 5 years ago, and they're just treading water. And I wish them well because I own some stock, and that's another thing I'll talk about. So if you want, we could talk about the actual breakdown of how much I took and how much I got in stock. But mentally, that was the most important thing, Corey. I want people to get out of this. When you sell your business, you have to understand what is it you're going to do next. I did not know. My business partner knew. He was so happy when we sold. I did not know what I was going to do. So I went to a depression for almost a year and a half until I found VPM. And then, I started VPM. I invested a ton of money into VPM, ton for me. I mean, I invested 420,000. I took 120 back out. So I'm in for 300 right now, still to this day. That is scary, man. Cause you don't know if it's going to work. You have no idea if your business is going to work. I'm not making any money now, right? The company let me go. I left, however, we parted ways. And so here I am, 2021. I leave in June, not making any money. My wife had just retired because she's like, "I put you through the first business, buddy, and you sold, and so you're going to, it's my time now." 100% agree. But now here I am in 21, investing money, 22 investing money, 23. I stopped investing money, but now I make like $1,000 a month, and the money that I sold my business, I'm living off of that thing. Right. And I'm just seeing it go down, go down, go down. And it's like a race against time, kind of like VC. It's almost, I was like the VC and we're running out of runway. Luckily VPM turned around. I'm paying myself a salary. We're not VC backed. We're still Pete backed. I have no private equity money. I've gone back and forth on that. And I decided that I'm not taking the money for right now. We'll look at it another year from now, but right now, and we're profitable and and I'm paying myself. So I'm pretty happy with that. So
love it. I so appreciate you sharing your journey. And one of the things that I, love to do on this podcast, sometimes we have professionals on, bankers, whatever, and we talk about what technical stuff, deal structure, whatever. But, but listeners love to hear entrepreneurial stories and journeys. A lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs looking to grow their business and build their business through deals. And
Corey, I'm not polished. I can tell you that, man. I'm working class.
Well, listen, it's
from the Bronx.
Again, many are not, and it's these kind of, it's a roller coaster or a crooked line or whatever. And I love when people want to share that. So, I want to highlight a few things you talked about because there's so many deal lessons in what you talked about. I mean, first of all, business partnerships are deals, and we've had people on specifically talking about that. And you raised, a really important thing about a divergence of vision, right? And and what you do in that case. And, in hindsight, you mentioned that, well, I probably should have spoken up earlier, right? And at the same time, what I appreciated about you is that you acknowledge that, well, maybe the fact that you did expand into some other jurisdictions helped the company be more attractive to, the acquirer and, more valuable and also, more saleable. And also the fact that you also, because listen, a lot of people, especially the lawyer, I see this all the time. And sometimes I see it in family businesses, and it just kills me every time where fathers and sons or brothers or whatever it is,
Stop talking.
are at war with each other because you actually considered the relationship as part of, you looked at your options. You said, I could refuse this thing, but you talked about a 20-year relationship. So, one thing I want to acknowledge and honor and also just point out to folks that, we all have these choices, right? In terms of how we deal with differences of opinion or vision when you're in any kind of business partnership, and then what your options are after that and the potential impact of those choices.
Agreed. And that relationship was important to me. And, again, looking back, like the only thing I would have done differently is I would have behaved differently towards the people in mind. I really was not a good team player. And that's something that I know I could have done better. And so that's the one thing that like, if you say, hey, what's the one thing you would change? Like that would be it. Like I would have been a better team player. I wouldn't have been happy, but I could have been a better team player for sure.
Yeah. And listen, it's not to, I appreciate that self-awareness and that insight. And I think one of the things that could help, because listen, people who become entrepreneurs and have that taste, or, whether, it's been for a little while, a long time, of, being the king or queen, so to speak, and running your own business, right? It's difficult to go become an employee again, right? And be subject to any kind of boss. And then when you add the other thing you mentioned, which is really important, is the impact on the kind of priorities and pressures and, that capital brings, right? That private equity, VC money brings. So, but, I think one of the things that I've seen with a lot of my clients, over the years, and listen, I experienced it. I merged my firm in with another law firm at one point back years ago, and then unmerged,
Okay.
5 years later. And largely the reason for me was when I went into the merger situation, I saw a huge opportunity for 1+1 to equal 3 or 4 or 5. And it did pan out economically. But the challenge for me was amongst many other things, including a thing you mentioned, which is sort of like my ex-partner being comfortable with a fire hose into a leaky bucket, right? Like turnover is fine in terms of clients, in terms of people, just keep the business coming. And that's just doesn't align with my personality. I can't not serve clients, right? Like I don't care how much money or whatever else is involved in that model. I can't do it. But also, the minute that I really, really felt like I was just had less control and was more like an employee than an entrepreneur, I was out, right? So I get it. It's tough. So I think one of the things that's a good lesson is that odds are, if you're selling your company and you're a key, and you're a founder, you're going to have to spend some time, whether that's, at a minimum of a 6-month transition period, and more likely, a year or two or so, just to get, you don't have to love it, but get yourself in that mindset that, hey, this is part of the deal, especially on a deal you choose to do, right? This is part of the deal. This is what I'm going to have to do. And, and I'll do it to the best of my ability during that time. And yes, after my agreed upon period, maybe I will say I'm out and start my new venture, or golf 250 rounds a year, or hop on a boat, whatever you want to do. So, yeah, so I think it's mentally prepared for that, because it's so often part of a deal.
Going through my exercise with it, I would counsel people that take less money, take all the money up front.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to pay us out. Like, I think it was a 5-year deal originally. They wanted to pay us out. And one of the things I realized is you can negotiate price or negotiate terms. In this instance, they had a formula and they said, this is the formula, this is the price, non-negotiable. I said, okay. And the price was fair. I don't have no challenge with the price, but I didn't want to pay 5 years, especially I don't even know if these guys are going to be around for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I ended up negotiating a 2-year payout, and then they wanted to pay me, I think it was like 30% or 40. If I took more, they were okay with it in stock. And so looking back, I think I would have said no to the stock.
Yep.
And this is where greed gets in you. We all get greedy, and I was greedy. And I'm like, I was counting my money, like, oh, they're going to have an event and it's going to be X dollars in stock. And, let's be quite honest. The chances of anybody who's not public making it to go public or have some event that's going to make you another second windfall, it's really, really hard. And it's probably not worth. You could probably just take the money up front in cash, invest it in some kind of stock or bond over 10 years and make just as much money or more than what the stock would have netted you. So I would have taken the money up front. The second thing is, a lot of times they do what's called a clawback. I don't know in other industries, but in my industry, it's a clawback.
Yep.
And so I would have rather just taken a little bit off the top, get all my money up front and exit stage left. I didn't know about any of this stuff. Like, I'm glad I just negotiated a 2-year deal. I had a clawback. It was super nerve wracking that first year. So we had a 1-year clawback, and then the second year we just got paid out. Even on my second year, they tried to screw me. I don't think on purpose. I just think like, oh, and they tried to do another clawback. And I'm like, no, no, no. You already took the clawback on year one, you don't do it on year two. And I luckily had stuff in writing and it was a non-issue. But it would have been much easier to, one, know exactly what I wanted to do when I was selling. 2, just take all the money up front. Don't worry about the clawback. Don't worry about the stock. And 3, go do your new thing, whether that's 250 rounds of golf a year or go start another business. Or if you want to go work for someone, because maybe you do want to go work for somebody and that's fine too. But go work for somebody that's not running your business, because that is hard. Because they're not going to run the business the same way you want to run the business. They're just not.
Yeah. It's really interesting on that equity piece. I actually just finished a draft. One of the publications asked me to do an article on how M&A has evolved in that particular space. And one of the things I talked about is that there's a lot of PE money that's come in, and as part of that, they start using equity as a portion of the currency, right? And whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, up to 50% sometimes, in equity. And that second bite of the apple, that multiple arbitrage promise, right? To say, hey, we're buying you at whatever it is, an 8x, because and we can afford to do that because our equity is currently worth a 14x, but we think we're going to be able to go public or sell it at a 22x, right, at some point, and you're going to get, you took 20 or 30% of your purchase price in equity. So that's going to be great for you because you got 8x on this, but you'll end up with your piece of the 22x on the back end. It's very, very tempting. And listen, don't get me wrong. There's been industries and examples where that's worked out and people have done very well. But you're right, it doesn't always. And in fact, probably, more often than not, maybe it doesn't. So one of the things that I always say to my clients is, listen, you should evaluate this. It's fine. I also did a talk recently where I mentioned this. You should evaluate those things as 2 different deals. You should evaluate it this way, even if you have to take, because some buyers will now give you all cash, right? They'll say you have to take at least 20% in equity or whatever it is. I always say, listen, in your mind, you should evaluate it as 2 deals. You should evaluate the first deal as if you got 100% cash, even though you're not getting it. So let's say it's an 80-20 deal, right? You should evaluate it as if you get 100% in cash and then you were making a 20% investment. So, you got 10 million bucks, 8 million cash, 2 million in equity. You should separately evaluate, would you take $2 million and invest it in the equity of that buyer as a separate analysis, a separate transaction?
I love that idea. And 9 times out of 10, it's probably no.
Right. So unless, in my example, with the 10, working on easy math with it, if the $8 million is, you're very happy with it and you're looking at the 2 million in equity as total gravy and you don't care and you're thrilled to get the 8 million, great. Okay. Easier decision. But if you think your company's really worth the 10 and you want that 10 and you're depending upon that 10, well, if you wouldn't invest that 2 million in the company, maybe you got to relook at the deal.
When my business partner came to me and said he wanted to sell, I reached out to my uncle who had his business since I was a teenager. And the first thing he asked me is like, can you buy him out? I'm like, man, I don't think so. And then he did not offer to invest. He did not offer to invest in me. So I let that go. And then the next thing he said is, he goes, well, how much are you going to sell for? And I'm like, we're going to sell for, $2.5 million. He's like, how many years would it take you to get that money if you just ran the business?
Yeah.
And I said, man, Uncle Bill, I could I get almost $1 million a year in the next 3 years. So I'm doing 500 right now. I could do, let's call it 600. He goes, so basically in 4 years, you would make all that money back. I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's stupid. I wouldn't sell.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you should look at, right? If the cash flow is good, if you are getting burnt out by the business, then hire the CEO to replace you, right? And then just run a lot less hours and just manage the CEO. And I'll tell you, Corey, when I was running Empire, those first like 8 years, I was putting in 80-hour weeks, weekends, nights, whatever it was. I was the first person in, last person to leave. I always try to lead by example. But the last year, I was down to about 4 hours a day. I finally gotten to a point like I don't need to be the guy first in, last out. I don't need to do that. I've already done my time, and I had my team in place. And then that's what really killed me, because I'm like, man, we're there. We can go.
Right.
I'll tell my business partner, we can go start something else now, because he says he's a visionary. I'm like, great. He goes, so when you own a management firm, we can do a brokerage, we can do an investment firm, we can do a title company. I'm like, we have the money now. Like, we're literally running, profitably for the first time like ever. And he's like, no, I don't believe we can continue doing that. So and I'm like, man, you're just killing me, bro. And so we ended up selling.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business, Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to coreycupford.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. All right, so let's start rolling into what you did post-sale. And before I go into, I want you to lead into the current company and what's going on. But I want to delve in a little more, because this is a topic that I talked about on a Solocast recently or whatever, and you mentioned it, you were kind enough to mention it. Like, this post-sale depression conversation is something I feel compelled to highlight, because I see it with a lot of, successful sales. I mean, I'm talking about even people who got never have to work again, their kids never have to work again money, right? So, let's take it to that level. You still see people get depressed. So share a little bit more about your experience with that before you started.
Yeah. Well, for me, my identity was wrapped up in Empire, right? I was Empire. Empire was me. Like, it's just like who I was. And then you sell. Yeah. Okay. You get, I think I put like around 1.7 in my pocket. So it's life-changing money, but I was 50 years old. I still had to work.
It's not generational money.
Not generational money. No, it's good, right? It's good money. But after taxes and all that good stuff, you're like, yeah, okay, I got to go back to work like immediately. Yeah, I could probably take like 4 or 5 years off. But that was really part of it. So now here I am trying to create my new identity with this new company. And I just, you go from you're the guy who sets the strategy, you're the guy who sets the culture, you're the guy who's making the big decisions, to you're a cog. And honestly, most of the people don't even want you there.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult for me. And it wasn't until I started VPM where I literally got out of my funk. And I think, when you talk about life-changing money, and for those people that don't have to work, I truly believe that God gives us work for a reason. What else can you do 10 hours a day, 7 days a week? Kidding. At least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. But what else can you do? I mean, even when I was running triathlons, I couldn't train for that long. Like, I couldn't have sex with my wife for that long. Like, there's not much you can do for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, other than work, man. And so I think people's identity get wrapped up. They love to work. They're entrepreneurs for a reason. And then when you take all that away, they have no idea what to do. The joke in my house is everybody always asks me, Pete, when are you going to, Pete, you're going to retire? And before I can say anything, my wife goes, he will never retire. And honestly, Corey, even when I quit my job and at 41 years old and I started Empire, I was paying myself $1,000 a month. Okay. I slung real estate on the side to basically make it. And I was working about 90 hours a week. And I did that for, at least 2 years before I started paying myself more and whatever. And I felt retired because I owned my time.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go in from 6 to 3, and if my boss wanted me wherever I had to be there, like it just. I mean, I made less money. I was getting less benefits. I had more stress than ever before, but I was happier. And I remember my wife, like, I'd come home one night. We were married, our first year of marriage. My wife thought she was a widow because, like,
Yeah.
I'd come home, like, dinner would be on the table and she'd be in bed already. And I'd come home. And one day she looks at me, she goes, "Are you happy?" I go, "Well, in this moment, I'm not, because some shit hit the fan." And she's like, I go, "But I'm happier than I ever was when I was working for the last company." And that's all she had to hear.
Yeah.
And I'll say one other thing that I know this is kind of a pivot or a tangent,
Yeah.
but without a wife who says those magic words, "I believe in you and I'm here for you and I'm going to, I got your back," my life would never be where it is. If I didn't have the right wife, I would have quit that job. I would have never started Empire. I never would have sold it for millions of dollars, and I never would have started a new business. And we would never be in the financial position we're in today without her. Because if some wives, they don't see the big picture. They want you to work because you have to bring in that money because they spend, you spend more than you make, no matter how much you make. You spend more than, you're just spending more and more and more. You're on that rat roll. We were not on the rat race. We had saved a bunch of money. We paid our house off. Cars were paid off. Even my first investment property was paid off. We were like, and so if it's not me, who? If it's not now, when? Type stuff. And so she's like, "Go for it." And so I know that was a tangent, but you have to have a strong business partner and a strong life partner.
Listen, Pete, I love actually that you brought that up. And I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, but just because you raised it, I have very intimate personal experience with that, because when I was first starting my law firm, I was in my first, I got married for the first time. And as you can tell by saying the first time, it wasn't my only time. And, my joke now is it was a practice marriage. We were married for about a year and a quarter. And actually, we were married for 3 years, but we were only together for a year and a quarter. That the divorce took longer than the marriage. But one of the big issues that I had that go around was I'm in a startup mode, right? I'm building my business. I'm working day and night, not making much money, trying to figure out this thing out and get clients and whatever. Because, I didn't leave a big firm with a book of business. I didn't come from money. I didn't, I built it from nothing. I was at every networking event every night, handing out business cards back in the day when you actually went to physical networking event. And, my first wife, not a bad person, but, she just didn't get it. She didn't understand that. Her family worked for somebody and they were miserable, by the way. They would sit around on the weekends and complain about their supervisors, but yet, she still didn't get the idea of wanting to work for myself, and that was, and improve myself and do all this stuff. And that was a big, big tension. Whereas my wife now, of 22 years married and 24 years together, who, by the way, is an entrepreneur herself, more than gets it. And it's interesting because when people say to me, what is why is your relationship so good? What's the most important thing in a marriage or a partnership or relationship? A lot of people say communication. They say this, they say that, and all those things are true. The thing I say, and it even chokes me up a lot of times when I say it, is that the biggest thing for me, and it's true me for her as well, is that she stands for my greatness.
I love
that. For our greatness.
I love that.
That's the way I put it. Like this, like similar to what you said, there's nothing more valuable to me than the fact that she always sees, calls forth, and encourages my greatness.
She believes in me more than I believe in myself sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, my wife, she actually worked for HR for an oil company. So she's complete opposite of entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it works for us.
Yeah.
And it just does. Like, she obviously thinks I'm crazy,
Sure.
Because most entrepreneurs have a little bit of crazy in them. But man, she loves it. She loves me. She loves it. And, she's reaping the benefits of that now. She's retired, but unfortunately, I got to work about 30 hours a week for VPM. And I don't pay her.
It sounds like we're both very, very blessed in our partners. All right. So listen, before I get to my final two questions, talk a little bit about VPM. I know part of your decision making, and you alluded to it, and in terms of taking some of the proceeds that you got from the sale of your first business were actually to start, VPM. Tell people, how you started, and also, a bit more about what the business does.
Yeah, thanks for that. So when I did sell, I did buy 4 houses, And then I invested a year and a half later into VPM, or about a year and a half later. Yeah. And so when I ran my property management firm, I was having a really hard time being profitable because the job roles that we'd hire people in the US for really didn't pay that much, right? But people in the US wanted more money. And the people I could only afford typically had issues outside the business that brought them into my business. And to them, it was a job, not a career. They didn't see the big picture. They didn't treat it like I treated it, right? And no one's going to treat it just like you, but they would just take it, come in, leave, whatever. Phone's ringing at 5 o'clock, doesn't matter. They punched out, I'm going.
Yeah.
And so I found that if I use virtual assistants, people in Mexico, Philippines, Costa Rica, Central America, things of that nature, I can get bilingual people, college educated, that care, and I can pay them a fair wage, but way less than the American wage. And so that's how I took my business from struggling to very prosperous, from, I call it chaos to clarity, from reactionary to proactive. And we started making money. Our churn rate went down. We were just our labor, our labor efficiency rate went up, just all sorts of things. And so when I sold, I was going to I had a company in Mexico, and I was going to I'll just, don't sell this. I'm saying this for fun, but I'll sell Mexicans. That's what I'll do. I'll just sell some Mexicans, right? And so that was the original plan. But I talked to Ross, who is now my new business partner, and he's like, because I wanted him to be CEO, and I didn't really want to deal with it. And he's like, I had an idea. I got a different idea. And he laid out what VPM is today. He goes, let's create an online platform where property management and real estate industry can find these virtual assistants, because no one knows where to find them, right? Yes. And then you can find them, you can interview them, you can train them. So we have about 38 training courses that they test out, and they can get certifications. And then you can pay them all through our platform, and you can manage their pay, you can manage their time cards. So that's what we do today. And so we just hit a milestone. We have over 1,000 jobs on the platform. We got 39,000 people looking for work, and over 300 jobs open right now. So we're pretty excited.
That's awesome. That's great. And so you mentioned you went into a new business partnership. So obviously you are, you are.
I know.
You passed one.
I actually have 3 business partners in this one. 1 active, 2 non-active. So I went the other way, Corey, right? You'd think that I would just be a solopreneur because it didn't work out, but I'm a glutton for punishment. And I think I do have the right partners. We get along, and they all bring certain different value, that they have different superpowers than I have. And so I think, 1 + 1 is 3, as you would try to do. I'm still subscribing to that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, listen, I went through the same thing after, let's see, what's the math? 15. So yeah, after about, 10 years or 9 years of not having, a business partner, after splitting up that last one, I now have a business partner. It's been great. And the universe has a funny way of doing things sometimes. And so the first name of my current business partner is the first name of my prior business partner. So, if I had anything going on, that I had to surrender or release from the last one, it tested me there. But it's great. And then also you talked about the fact that you haven't yet raised capital on this, but it didn't sound like, it sounded like that wasn't off the table, despite your concerns about working at a venture-backed place.
Well, that's the biggest concern, right? When you get that VC money, the number one thing that you worry about is losing control. So I keep being told there's 3 main reasons to get money, to raise capital. Number 1 is you have this idea, but you have no money. Well, I had enough money to start the idea, and now we're making money. Yeah. Number 2 is that you're in a huge market, right? Like Uber, right? It's a huge market. And my market, it's niched down, right? If you're not in property management or in real estate and looking for a VA, there's 1,000 others out there. Yeah. You can go there. Yeah. And then the third thing is is it competition, right? Is there a lot of competition? And honestly, I just don't see it. And this could be very naive of me. I just don't see a venture-backed company coming in and say, let's build an online platform for the real estate industry. I just don't see it. So I feel like because we're so niched down that we're somewhat insulated from that type of competition. But I will tell you, the one thing that keeps me up, Corey, is AI. I just see some 13-year-old kid just walking into a NARPM conference saying, oh, I can do this with AI, and just build something, and he's got a boot the next year, and I'm out of business. Yeah. So I will be embracing AI next year. I was 50 when I started my tech business. I'll be 55 and learning all about AI.
Love Love it. Love the evolution. And I mean, we listen on the legal side as well, where we're really spending a lot of time getting up to speed and, and look at what's going to be there. I mean,
AI is going to disrupt all of our businesses, man.
It's going to disrupt everything. I mean, certainly the parts of law that are much more cookie cutter, real estate closings, bankruptcy filings. We have a friend has a leading AI development product for immigration. He's an immigration lawyer. There's a lot of, repetitive forms and that kind of stuff. I do more high-end customized strategy kind of stuff. I think it's going to be tougher. I'm not saying they won't get there eventually, but, I might be done by then. But but no, I mean, you got to be on top of it. Well, great, Pete. So if people want to find out more so I super appreciate you, just openly, authentically sharing your journey. I think it's going to be real valuable to folks. If people want to find out more about you or obviously VPM and what VPM's doing now, where do they go?
If somebody feels compelled, they want to reach out. I'm still kind of old school. I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't really look at it very often. So Pete at VPM Solutions. So virtual property manager, VPM Solutions, with an S.com. Or just go to our website, vpmsolutions.com. And if anybody reaches out to me, I don't have an executive assistant. I actually read all my email and I respond to all my own email.
I love it. Pete, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom around the world for all people, from oppression to why I've been an entrepreneur for decades and I haven't had a boss. But what does freedom mean to you and how does it impact your life and business?
Yeah, freedom means to me that I can do anything I want at any time that I want, right? That's kind of the main freedom. I will say that kind of above, like a little bit higher than that. The reason why I create a VPM is if you think about it, I have people in Philippines that are making more money than they could ever make in their life, or in Mexico or whatever. So we are changing lives around the country, around the globe and around the country, because people here in the US are now able to, for the first time, run profitable businesses. So I feel like I'm not only am I getting my freedom, but I'm giving people freedom in all over the world.
I love that. Pete, thanks for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Thanks for having me, Corey. It was a great time. I had a blast.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. The Deal Den is a place where entrepreneurs, high-level executives, and business leaders come together, support each other's growth and success, and share what's working best, as well as what challenges we are facing right now. You will get input not only from me, but from all of our members. We collaborate and serve each other. To join us, go to corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.